I have a confession to make. I have zero clue the last time I played anything lower than a 9 in ITG. And I don't know if that's really my fault, because sometimes it feels like packs that are released these days only have expert charts, which sucks because it completely deters new players from the game by not having any accessible lower content. But I actually have a fun story back from 2019 when I visited a community member from Nebraska, Zonksek, who had just gotten a cab. When I came over, he was actually participating in the lower division for ECFA 2019. What I saw next actually blew my mind, because the chart he was playing is the one I'm going to look at today, and it was a medium chart. It was a 7, and it had Footswitches. It was a 7 with Footswitches. When I learned Footswitches, probably back in 2014 or 2015, which is probably still pretty late for the chart I'm going to mention, it was Brain Fog, which is a chart from Tachyon Beta. It's a 14 that has long Footswitches at like 16th notes at 150 BPM and a bunch of 24th runs. So honestly, just looking at that, like getting into ITG has never been easier for newer players. I think on average, step artists today care way more about charting lower difficulty stuff than they ever have before this. So thank you guys so much for doing that. It's so important for our community to have lower level content for those new players to jump onto. So with that said, let's look at this chart. It's the medium chart for Travel to Future by Chief Skittles. I think the first thing I'll mention is that the mines are intentionally designed in a way where if you don't do the foot switch or you try to double step it or something, you will hit the mines. But I think a better way to frame this is use the mines to cue the foot switch. The mines are intentionally placed there by the step artist so that you know where they are and when to execute them. Another thing I want to talk about with these foot switches, one of the most common problem with foot switches, especially ones that are this slow, is people may leave their foot on the panel for too long. So what does that mean? Think about it this way. If I have a button that's already pressed down and I keep it held down, if someone else tries to press that button, what will happen? And the answer is nothing, because you can't send another input on a button that's already held down. And that's exactly what happens with foot switches, where let's say this pattern here starts on the left. Where was I? I skipped ahead here. We would end up hitting this note with the left foot. And the goal is that this one is hit with the right. But what happens is, if you press this with the left, and then you hang on to this panel for too long, then this panel is actually still held down by the time you hit with the right. And so what happens is, you'll step on the panel with your right foot, your left foot's still on it, so you'll miss the note. So that's one of the big things to think about. When I do this, for a song like this, something so slow, what happens is when I hit my left here, I'll keep my toes planted on the center panel, and I'll actually just get off of the left arrow, or I'll get off of the down arrow by just lifting my heel up. You don't actually have to lift your entire foot away from the entire pad. You only need to keep your foot away from the panel so it's not pressed down. And for the down arrow, the easiest way to do that is by just lifting your heel. You can still leave your toes on the center panel. And then for the inverse, for up arrow foot switches, let's see here. Here, this is left to right. You want to make sure that you're in a position where this is hit with the left, this on the right. You want to make sure that you don't stay held down all the way. You want to make sure that at some point before you hit the right arrow here, or the right foot here, that your foot is released, right? For the up arrow, I feel like the easiest way to do that is kind of the opposite, where you don't actually have to lift your entire foot away from the panel. All I'm doing is keeping my heel planted on the center panel, and I'm letting go of the up arrow by lifting my toes up. I think especially because there's so much space between the notes and the foot switch, in particular, it's really easy to mess up and keep the panel held down for too long on those notes. For these foot switches, I actually think they're easier. Yep, so for example, this would be, oh man, I'm losing my cursor. Left, right, left. Because the notes are faster, it's actually easier for you to just kind of keep it flowy, keep your feet moving. Don't stay on the panel for too long, just keep it moving, and it's unlikely that you will drop this note here for being held too long. That's all I have for this chart. I'm still totally down for suggestions for any other charts people are reviewed. I just think this chart's super cool to look at. Just having intro foot switch content as low as 7s is super cool. I also did get critique from my last video to put foot cams in. I do have to kind of rethink how I record these videos, but I think it can be something that I get including footwork into future videos. So yeah, thanks again. And once again, if there's any suggestions or feedback, I'm totally open to it. I'll see you guys next time.